So as I know is true for so many of you in this room, we've grown into our places in this movement, though we've been at the forefront of it. The climate action organization we co-founded, 350.org, so named for the parts per million in the atmosphere we need to somehow return to from 400 to avert catastrophic climate change, has led the charge around the world in bringing light to the action we need. This divestment campaign is just the latest of many high-profile, powerful campaigns to come out of his organization. Bill's leadership is inspirational, and we're very thankful he could be here tonight to mark what is hopefully only the beginning of Dartmouth's divestment campaign.
Thank you enormously. What a pleasure to hear everybody talk and so eloquently. And of course to hear Terry talk and read. You all know her as a great writer and teacher, and she is one of the great writers that we have in the whole country, in the whole English language. But she's also a terrific activist. And I was sitting there thinking, she and her husband Brooke in the front row were absolutely central, among other things, in making sure that about 2 million acres of southern Utah got set aside as wildland 20 years ago now. And if they hadn't done what they've done, that land would be turned into something else already. It's a really good example of how people standing up to make change happen, which we need to have happen. I was thinking of something Patrick just said about how he wasn't used to thinking of himself as an activist. And really, I'm not either. I'm a writer by trade and training, and I wrote the first book about climate change 24 years ago now, which is how I sort of got into this mess. And it was only 5 or 6 years ago that it just became clear to me that our political systems were not making the change that we needed. Mostly because of the incredible power of the fossil fuel industry, political power of wealth, enough to prevent change from happening. And so we did start 350.org and went to work, and it's been interesting work, sometimes painful, because you meet people all over the world, and when you've met them, you have no choice but to be kind of involved in what's happening in their lives. So, tonight I'm thinking hard of our colleagues in Burma and in Bangladesh. There's a cyclone now in the Bay of Bengal. It's supposed to hit sometime in the next 36 hours or so. The Bay of Bengal is apparently hotter than has ever been recorded there. And so that cyclone will, of course, be dangerous and powerful. And just one of the things that now happens someplace around the world every day on this changed earth. Earlier today, the great British economist Lord Nicholas Stern, put out a new paper saying that we should expect hundreds of millions of refugees by mid-century on the course that we're on. Hundreds of millions of climate refugees. There's already tens of millions of them. And the sad news is that those of us, well, I'm at Middleburg, where I teach, and y'all are at Dartmouth, and, that cyclone, to one degree or another, bears our name as it works across those hot water. Because we've been willing to invest in the companies that have prevented change from happening. The fossil fuel industry that has done everything that it can to make sure that we do not get off the diet of coal and gas and oil that scientists have now told us is ruinous, and whose ruin we can see with our own eyes. Last summer, the Arctic melted. New Cryosat data, which I'm pretty sure they have good access to at the polar studies facilities here, show that about 80% of the summer sea ice in the Arctic that was there 40 years ago is gone. We've taken one of the largest physical systems on Earth and we've broken it. And we're going to keep breaking things because the fossil fuel industry has in its reserves 5 times as much carbon as the most conservative government or scientist on Earth thinks would be safe to burn. 5 times as much as would take us past 2 degrees. If we took seriously that 2-degree target that all the nations of the world have signed on to, then they would have to keep most of that carbon in the ground. And as HSBC and Citigroup said in separate reports within the last 6 weeks, that would necessitate cutting the share price of our fossil fuel industry in half. So just be clear, if you own this stuff, the bet that you're making is that the world will do nothing about climate change. Because if it does, then the value of those stocks will fall. They will do everything they can to keep that from happening. That's why, for instance, the largest campaign donation in the post-Citizens United world came from Chevron 2 weeks before the last election, determined to make sure that the House of Representatives stayed in the hands of climate deniers. It was successful. Nothing will happen in Washington for the next couple of years, which is why we have to fight. Undermine that power. We do not think that by divestment we can bankrupt Exxon. We do think that we can begin to weaken their political power. That's what happened with South Africa. When Nelson Mandela got out of prison, I mean, the same people who had said, the same kinds of people who say now, oh, divestment isn't going to do anything, or there's some easier way we can do this, or we'll just, you know, put a little pressure on you, whatever they're saying. They were saying that about South Africa too. When Nelson Mandela got out of prison, the first place he went was the United States. He did not go first to the White House. He went first to California to thank students in the UC system who had forced the divestment of $3 billion worth of stock, one of 155 campuses, including Dartmouth, that had done that. And what he said was, we fought for our own liberation, but we couldn't have done it without your help. And that's even more true in this globally interlinked world we're in now. That's why Desmond Tutu, Mandela's great accomplice who won the Nobel for his work to fight apartheid, made a little video for us when we were starting this campaign. And he said, if you can see what's going on right now in Africa, famine and drought, you would understand why I'm asking you to take up this same tool again that you took up 25 years ago. Normally, when we have a problem with the company, we don't need to divest. We do shareholder engagement and have proxy fights and boycotts and all those kind of things. You know, Apple isn't paying its Chinese laborers enough. That doesn't mean that we have to hate on iPhones. There's a flaw in the business plan and we can fix it. But with the fossil fuel industry, the flaw is the business plan. And that's why we need very quickly to figure out how this is how to weaken the political power. Let me just say quickly, because I'm more interested in pretty much all we're thinking about this, but let me just say that as we've watched this develop now in about 340 campuses around the nation, a few things keep coming up that are really important. One is that administrations and administrators keep saying, oh, well, we'd kind of like to do something like this, but it would be hard. All our funds are commingled with other funds, or we have to, you know, things like that. True, it is not absolutely snap simple to do. That's why students have said take 5 years to wind down your positions once you've made this public commitment. But on the list of things that we're going to have to do to deal with climate change, all of which are hard because this will be the biggest transition that we've ever made as a planet, on that list of hard things, this is one of the easier ones to do. And if your current set of investment advisors won't do it easily for you, one of the good things about having a couple of $1 billion in your endowment is capitalism works. You can find somebody else who will do with your money what you want done. Second thing is, it doesn't come at endless, huge expense. The only academic research we have on this shows that the theoretical risk to return if you backcast would have been less than a basis point. In fact, as Tom Steyer, the hedge fund billionaire who built one of the largest hedge funds in the country, and then this year announced that he was selling all of his fossil fuel positions, said, not only am I doing this for moral reasons, I'm doing it because this carbon bubble is real, and because you have a chance to get out ahead of it, you are in a better place at a university than you would be elsewise. Other people are sort of left reading Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal for investment advice, but a place like Dartmouth has a physics department, and that physics department has been warning for a very long time that there is more carbon in the ground than we can afford to burn, hence an opportunity to do the right thing and, in fact, do good for yourself along the way. But those practical considerations, in the end, are not the real key. I mean, the real key at some level is deep moral point. If it's wrong to wreck the climate of the planet, then it is wrong to profit from that wreckage, which is precisely what we all are doing at the moment if we're at institutions invested in this way. Colleges like Dartmouth have posted correctly about how they're working to green their campus, and Dartmouth's done significant and interesting work along this way. It has more to do, especially with its heating plant and things like that. But to boast about those things and then not address the endowment is strange. If it's important to green the dining hall, then it's just as important to green the portfolio. It's not like there's some separate thing. They're all part of the campus. In fact, it's particularly important, though others are taking up this call. And so far, 11 cities, including Seattle and San Francisco, have announced their plans to divest. It's particularly important to do it at universities, because universities make clear the special generational component about climate change that makes it so odd. Normally at a college, what we do, more or less, is have old people tell young people things. Yeah, that's the basic model of the college. And basically, it's pretty good, you know, the theory being that we've picked up something along the way that it might be worth sharing with you, and in certain cases, that's even true. You know? But in this case, it gets flipped on its head. Because, you know, I'm going to be dead in 25 years. Which means I will have gotten to live most of my life not in the shadow of climate change. It's now happening and happening hard. I mean, Irene was a pretty good wake-up call for all of us in these valleys about what's going on. But if you're 20 right now, you get to live for 60 or 70 years on this planet, and those rising lines of temperature and of sea level will run right over your lives unless we head it off fast. And so moral authority shifts in this case. And it's time for trustees and administrators and professors to follow the lead of students in this case and get behind this movement. It's particularly important, I think, for faculty to be engaged. If there was ever an excuse, ever a good reason for tenure, it's precisely situations like this. Your work on this kind of thing with a vengeance. Let me just end by saying it's very good to work to perfect one's own life and to work to perfect one's own place. Good to do that work. Given the short time, the short window that physics leads us to deal with climate change, we also have to work as effectively as we can at changing the structures and systems that drive us. Had we 100 years, then slow cultural change, one person at a time would be all that we needed and the perfect thing. We do not have 100 years. There are people who are in refugee camps tonight. And it makes me think, the first time that I ever came to Dartmouth as a young reporter for New Yorker magazine, fresh out of college myself, and I was up here because your predecessors at this campus who were fighting apartheid in South Africa had erected a shanty town on the green. And it was a place where people said, if our college is comfortable with profiting from people who make people live in conditions like this, then we will live in those conditions too. And it was a powerful witness, and it was a bad moment when I was up here because some students had decided that they would go in and wreck that shantytown, tear it down. And it was a horrible moment, but one that the Dartmouth campus rallied around and led to that divestment that Morgan was describing. We need you to rally in the same kind of way. There's a plaque on the wall in here that talks about the time that Dr. King came to speak in this room. We don't have any Dr. Kings in this movement, okay? And it's a plaque. We could use great charismatic moral leaders. We don't have. What we do have is this movement now, interconnected, rising up all over the planet. I can't tell you we're going to win, but I can tell you that people everywhere have their eyes on what you're doing. Last week at Bowdoin, students erected a kind of mock refugee camp out on the quad and moved into it, sort of like those shanty towns some time ago. And one of the first things that happened was an elder from the atoll called Takalau in the Pacific, a place where the water is rising so fast that people are having to evacuate their homes. One of the people wanted to, we work in every country but North Korea. So he heard about this. He saw, I don't know quite how, one of the messages go out, and he sat down and just wrote a note to those kids saying, thank you so much for doing this. We're not going to drown peacefully here. We're going to fight every inch of the way, and we need you to fight for us, and we need you to tell your elders to do the right thing. That, I think, is what we've got to keep in our heads and hearts going forward. No guarantee that any of this is going to work. It's incredibly good to see this battle engage in so many places, including here in Hanover. Thank you.